Welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we're diving into the world of the Washington quarter dollar coins. These coins might look like the regular change in your pocket, but many Washington quarters are actually rare, collectible, and surprisingly valuable. Some of them can be worth far more than just 25 cents, and coin collectors everywhere are always on the lookout for these hidden treasures. That's why you'll want to stay and watch this entire video, because I'll be sharing all the important details you need to know about the history, the key years, and the value of these fascinating coins. If you enjoy learning about rare and valuable coins, make sure to hit that subscribe button and join our growing community, because I bring you more videos that reveal which coins could be worth so much more than you ever imagined. Let's get started. First up, the 1965 Washington quarter dollar coin with no mint mark is one of the most talked about coins in American coinage history. Many collectors and enthusiasts often overlook this coin, thinking it's just another quarter you find in pocket change. But the truth is that the 1965 Washington quarter holds a very important place in the world of coins, and it can be valuable. When people hear about rare coins, they often think about old silver dollars or wheat pennies. But the 1965 quarter is something that every collector should pay attention to. And in this video, I'm going to talk in detail about why the 1965 Washington quarter dollar coin with no mint mark is valuable, its history, its significance, and what makes it stand out. So stay with me all the way through, because the details you're about to hear may completely change the way you look at this coin. In 1965, the United States Mint made a major change in the composition of coins. Before 1965, Washington quarters were struck in 90% silver. Collectors loved these silver coins, and they carried both face value and metal value. But because of rising silver prices, the mint could no longer afford to keep making quarters out of silver. So in 1965, the Washington quarter changed forever. From this year onward, the coin was produced without silver, using a copper-nickel clad composition instead. That is why the 1965 Washington quarter dollar with no mint mark is such an important turning point in U.S. coinage history. It marks the very first year of the clad coinage era, and that alone gives it a special place in the eyes of collectors. And yes, that means this coin can be valuable. Now, you might be wondering, what does no mint mark mean on the 1965 Washington quarter? Well, prior to the late 1960s, quarters made at the Philadelphia Mint did not carry a mint mark. So when you look at a 1965 Washington quarter, you won't see a D for Denver or an S for San Francisco. Instead, the absence of a mint mark tells you it was struck in Philadelphia. For collectors, that detail is very important. And even though millions of 1965 quarters were produced, certain varieties, conditions, and errors make this coin stand out. That is why it is not just an ordinary quarter. It is a valuable coin that many collectors search for. Let's also talk about the historical backdrop. The 1960s were a time of change for the United States Mint. People were hoarding silver coins because the value of silver was climbing higher than the face value of the coins themselves. This caused a shortage of coins in circulation, and in response, the Mint removed silver from dimes and quarters starting in 1965. That change made the 1965 Washington quarter unique, because it was the very first of its kind. Collectors love first-year issues, and the fact that this coin has no mint mark makes it even more distinctive. This is why when you hear coin experts discuss valuable Washington quarters, the 1965 no mint mark quarter always comes up as an important one. Another thing that makes the 1965 Washington quarter dollar coin so valuable is the existence of error coins. During the transition from silver to clad composition, a few quarters were mistakenly struck on leftover 90% silver planchets from 1964. If you happen to find a 1965 quarter struck on a silver planchet, it can be worth hundreds or even thousands of dollars, depending on condition. Imagine finding what looks like an ordinary 1965 quarter in your change, only to realize it is one of the most valuable error coins out there. This is why collectors always check the weight of their 1965 quarters. Silver planchets weigh slightly more than clad ones. So once again, the 1965 Washington quarter dollar coin with no mint mark can be extremely valuable under the right circumstances. When we think about value, condition is also key. While a regular circulated 1965 Washington quarter might only be worth its face value, uncirculated or mint state examples can be worth much more. Collectors pay special attention to coins with strong details, original luster, and minimal wear. The better the condition, the more valuable the coin becomes. And for a first-year clad quarter, like the 1965 no mint mark, collectors are willing to pay a premium for high-grade examples. That is why it's important to remember that even though millions were minted, not all of them survive in great condition, and that scarcity makes the better ones more valuable. Now let's go deeper into the design. The obverse of the coin features the familiar portrait of George Washington, designed by John Flanagan. This design had been used on the quarter since 1932, but by 1965 it carried new significance, since the composition of the coin had changed. On the reverse, the eagle with outstretched wings remained a powerful symbol of American strength. The design may look the same as earlier quarters, but beneath the surface, the change in metal made the 1965 Washington quarter-dollar coin a landmark piece. For collectors, this design combined with the year 1965 tells a bigger story about American coinage, making it much more than just a regular coin. Collectors also consider the 1965 Washington quarter valuable because it represents a transitional year. Transitional coins are always special because they mark the end of one era and the beginning of another. In this case, 1964 was the last year of silver quarters, and 1965 was the first year of clad quarters. That transition alone makes the 1965 no mint mark Washington quarter a collectible piece of history. And with the possibility of silver planchet errors mixed into the production, this coin is even more fascinating. So whether you're a beginner or an advanced collector, learning about the 1965 Washington quarter-dollar coin is essential. Many people underestimate the value of this coin. They see a quarter and think it is worth only 25 cents, but that's not the case. The history, the errors, the condition, and the unique place in U.S. coinage all combine to make this coin much more valuable than it seems. And that's exactly why you should pay attention to the 1965 Washington quarter-dollar with no mint mark. It may look ordinary, but it's a coin that represents change, scarcity, and potential value far beyond its face value. So remember, the 1965 Washington quarter-dollar coin with no mint mark is not just another quarter. It is a valuable coin, a historic coin, and a coin that collectors always keep an eye on. Whether it's because of the first-year clad issue, the possibility of silver errors, or the demand for high-grade examples, this coin continues to hold a special place in the world of numismatics. And that is why it's important for you to know its story and to always look closely at any 1965 quarter that comes into your hands. Next up, the 1980 Washington quarter-dollar coin with the D mint mark is one of those coins that collectors and coin enthusiasts often pay close attention to. At first glance, it may look like just another quarter you find in your pocket change, but the truth is that the 1980 D Washington quarter is much more than ordinary. This coin can be valuable, and it has a story that connects history, design, and coin collecting all together. In this video, I will go in depth about everything you need to know about the 1980 Washington quarter with the Denver mint mark. We will look at its background, its design, its mintage, its errors, and why collectors always keep an eye on this coin. And remember, the 1980 Washington quarter with D mint mark is a coin that can be valuable, and you should know why. Let's start with the basics. The Washington quarter series began in 1932, designed by John Flanagan to honor the 200th birthday of George Washington. For decades, this design remained on the quarter, and by 1980, it was still the standard coin in circulation. The obverse of the coin shows the portrait of George Washington, facing left, with the word Liberty above and the motto, "In God We Trust," to the left. The date 1980 appears at the bottom, and just to the right of Washington's portrait, you'll see the D mint mark. That D stands for Denver, which is where the coin was struck. And it is this detail, the D mint mark, that makes the 1980 D Washington quarter-dollar coin identifiable and collectible. Now, let's talk about why this coin is valuable. The 1980 Washington quarter with D mint mark is valuable because collectors look for high-quality examples, rare errors, and coins that have survived in excellent condition despite being in circulation for more than 40 years. Even though millions were minted, not all of them remain in pristine condition. Finding a 1980 D Washington quarter in mint state or uncirculated condition makes it much more valuable. Collectors know that quality matters, and coins with strong strikes, clean surfaces, and original luster are always worth more. That's why it's so important to pay attention to this coin, because the right example of the 1980 Washington quarter dollar with D mint mark can be very valuable. Another reason this coin is valuable comes from error coins. During the minting process, mistakes sometimes happen. The 1980 D quarter is known to have several interesting errors and varieties that collectors search for. Some examples include off-center strikes, double dies, and clipped planchets. An error coin is always exciting because it turns something ordinary into something unique and collectible. When you combine the 1980 date with the Denver mint mark and add in the possibility of errors, you get coin that becomes much more desirable to collectors. And again, this is why the 1980 D Washington quarter is considered valuable. Now let's place the coin in its historical context. By 1980, the Washington quarter had already been in circulation for nearly 50 years. The composition of the coin had changed in 1965 from 90% silver to copper-nickel clad. That means the 1980 Washington quarter dollar coin with D mint mark is made of a copper core with a nickel coating, giving it that familiar silvery appearance. Even though it no longer contained silver, it remained a workhorse of American commerce, used every day in vending machines, stores, and transactions of all kinds. Because of this heavy use, many of the 1980 D quarters became worn down quickly. That's why finding one in great condition is not easy, and that scarcity in higher grades makes it valuable to collectors. Let's also consider the mintage. The Denver Mint produced hundreds of millions of quarters in 1980. At first, this large number might make you think the coin can't be valuable. But remember, value in coin collecting doesn't just come from how many were made. It comes from how many survive in top condition, and how many have special features like errors or varieties. This is exactly why collectors still search through change, coin rolls, and collections to find the 1980 Washington quarter with D mint mark in the best possible state. When you find one with sharp details, clean surfaces, and original shine, it becomes a coin that can be valuable even though so many were produced. The design itself also adds to the story of the coin. George Washington's portrait on the obverse is one of the most recognizable images in U.S. coinage. On the reverse, the eagle with outstretched wings has been a powerful and enduring symbol for decades. By 1980, this design had become a classic part of American culture. Collectors see the 1980 D Washington quarter as a continuation of this long tradition, and because it comes from a time when the U.S. Mint was producing millions of coins for commerce, it also represents everyday life in the late 20th century. That blend of history, design, and symbolism is another reason why the coin is valuable to collectors who appreciate more than just metal content. Another aspect to note is how the 1980 Washington quarter dollar with D mint mark fits into collections. Some collectors aim to build complete sets of Washington quarters, covering every year and mint mark. For these collectors, the 1980 D quarter is essential. Without it, their collection would be incomplete. The demand from set builders is another reason the coin holds value. And when demand combines with condition, rarity of errors, and historical significance, the result is clear. This coin is valuable. Now let's talk more about errors and varieties that make the 1980 D Washington quarter stand out. Some coins were struck slightly off-center, giving them an unusual appearance. Others may show doubling in the lettering or in Washington's portrait, known as a double die. These coins are instantly more valuable to collectors because they are different and scarce. Some planchets may have been improperly cut, resulting in clipped planchets that look like a small piece of the coin is missing. Every one of these varieties adds to the excitement of collecting the 1980 Washington quarter with D mint mark. And each one of these possibilities is why collectors take the time to study this coin and search for valuable examples. It's also worth mentioning that by 1980, Coin collecting was becoming more popular in the United States. People were paying more attention to the coins in their pocket change. That means many 1980 D quarters were noticed early on and saved in good condition. But at the same time, millions were still used heavily in circulation, which makes it harder today to find pristine examples. This contrast creates a dynamic market for the coin. On one hand, there's still plenty of worn 1980 quarters out there. But on the other hand, high-grade examples are scarce and therefore valuable. And that is the key message. The 1980 Washington quarter dollar coin with D mint mark is valuable, especially in the right condition. Collectors also pay attention to the grading of these coins. A worn 1980 D quarter may only be worth its face value, but a coin in uncirculated condition, graded at a higher level, can sell for much more. This is because collectors want the best examples possible. The better the grade, the more valuable the coin. And when you add the Denver mint mark, you're talking about a coin that fits perfectly into collections and continues to draw interest even today. So, when you see a 1980 Washington quarter dollar coin with the D mint mark, don't dismiss it as just pocket change. It has value because of its history, because of its design, because of the possibility of errors, and most importantly, because collectors want it in the best condition possible. Whether you find one in circulation, in a coin roll, or in a collection, always take a closer look. The 1980 D Washington quarter is a coin that can be valuable, and understanding why gives you a deeper appreciation for American coins. The more you study this coin, the more you realize that value is not always obvious at first glance. Millions of people handled these quarters in everyday life, never realizing that some examples would become sought after by collectors decades later. That is the beauty of coin collecting. What looks ordinary can turn out to be extraordinary. And the 1980 Washington quarter dollar with D mint mark is a perfect example of that. It is a coin that carries value, history, and significance all in one. Next up, the 1967 Washington quarter dollar coin with no mint mark is one of those coins that may appear to be just an ordinary piece of change, but in reality, it is a fascinating and valuable part of American coinage history. Many people overlook this coin because millions were produced, but collectors know that the 1967 Washington quarter carries a story that makes it stand out. It is a coin worth talking about, and it is a coin that can be valuable. In this video, we're going to go deep into the details of the 1967 Washington quarter with no mint mark, and by the end, you will understand why collectors care so much about it and why you should always pay attention to this coin. Let's start with the historical context. The year 1967 was an important time in U.S. coinage. Just a couple of years earlier, in 1965, the United States Mint removed silver from the quarter because the rising price of silver made it too expensive to continue producing silver coins. Before 1965, Washington quarters were made of 90% silver. But starting in 1965, the mint switched to a copper-nickel clad composition. The 1967 Washington quarter dollar with no mint mark is one of these clad quarters. Even though it no longer had silver, this coin represents an important era in U.S. history. It shows the transition from silver to base metal coinage, and collectors value this connection. That is why the 1967 Washington quarter is more than just pocket change. It is a valuable historical piece. Now let's talk about the no mint mark feature. When you look at a 1967 quarter, you will notice there's no mint mark on the coin. This wasn't by accident. From 1965 to 1967, the U.S. Mint removed mint marks from all coins as part of a policy to discourage hoarding. At that time, people were saving coins with certain mint marks because they thought they might be rare. To reduce this behavior, the Mint decided not to put any mint marks on coins for a few years. That is why the 1967 Washington quarter dollar coin does not have a mint mark. And this makes it unique in its own way. Collectors know that when they see a quarter from 1967, the absence of a mint mark is part of its identity. It is one of the reasons this coin stands out, and it is one of the reasons this coin is valuable. Even though the Mint struck millions of 1967 quarters, value comes from several important factors: condition, scarcity of errors, and collector demand. Let's start with condition. Most 1967 quarters were heavily circulated. People use them in everyday transactions, so finding one in pristine, mint state condition today is much harder. That's why uncirculated examples are valuable. Collectors pay special attention to coins that still have their original shine, sharp details, and minimal wear. The better the condition, the more valuable the 1967 Washington quarter becomes. Another reason this coin is valuable is because of error coins. During the minting process, mistakes sometimes happen, and when they do, those coins become highly collectible. The 1967 Washington quarter is known to have certain errors, like off-center strikes, double dies, and clipped planchets. Each of these errors makes the coin rarer and more desirable. Imagine finding a 1967 quarter in your change and realizing it has a doubling in the lettering or an unusual off-center strike. Suddenly, what looks like an ordinary coin is worth much more than face value. And that is why collectors always look closely at the 1967 Washington quarter dollar coin with no mint mark, because error coins from this year can be valuable. Let's take a moment to focus on the design of the coin. On the obverse, we see the portrait of George Washington, designed by John Flanagan. Washington's profile faces left, with the word Liberty above, the motto, "In God We Trust," to the left, and the date 1967 at the bottom. On the reverse, we see the bold eagle design with outstretched wings, clutching arrows and olive branches, a symbol of American strength and peace. Even though the design had been in use since 1932, the 1967 issue carries extra importance because of the unique circumstances of that time. Collectors know that this design, combined with the no mint mark policy, makes the 1967 Washington quarter dollar coin stand apart from other quarters. And this design, tied to history, adds to its value. Now, let's go back to the policy of no mint marks from 1965 to 1967. This policy is what makes the 1967 quarter very distinctive. When mint marks returned in 1968, collectors once again could identify where a coin was made. But for 3 years, all coins lacked mint marks. That means the 1967 Washington quarter dollar coin with no mint mark is part of a short, unusual period in American coinage history. Collectors love coins that break from the norm, and the fact that these quarters are permanently tied to that policy makes them desirable. That is another reason why this coin is valuable. It's also important to consider the transitional aspect of this coin. The 1967 quarter is a product of the new clad era, when silver had just been removed. Collectors often view transitional coins as especially collectible because they mark change. The 1967 Washington quarter is part of that transition. It reminds us of the end of silver coinage and the beginning of clad coinage. This connection to a turning point in U.S. history makes it more meaningful and more valuable in the eyes of collectors. Another point that adds to the value of the 1967 Washington quarter dollar coin is the fact that it is over half a century old. Time itself makes coins more collectible. While billions of coins circulate today, finding coins from the 1960s in good condition is getting harder each year. Many have been lost, damaged, or worn beyond recognition. That scarcity over time increases value. A 1967 quarter in excellent condition is not just a coin. It's a survivor of its era, and that makes it valuable. Collectors also know that the 1967 Washington quarter, with no mint mark, plays an important role in building complete sets of Washington quarters. Anyone who collects by date needs the 1967 issue. That constant demand from collectors ensures that the coin will always have value in the numismatic world. And because the coin is tied to both historical context and unique policies of the mint, it holds a special place in any collection. Let's not forget about the special mint sets of 1967. During this period, the U.S. Mint did not produce traditional proof sets or mint sets, but instead created what were called special mint sets. These sets included higher quality strikes of coins, and the 1967 Washington quarter included in these sets often has a better appearance than regular circulation strikes. Collectors highly value these special strikes because they show sharper details and better surfaces. A 1967 quarter from a special mint set can be much more valuable than a regular circulation coin, and that is another reason this year is important. When you put all of these details together, you see why the 1967 Washington quarter dollar coin with no mint mark is valuable. It is tied to history. It has unique features. It can appear with collectible errors. It has special mint set versions, and it plays a key role in coin collections. Even though millions were made, finding the right example with strong details and great condition makes it a coin worth more than just face value. So, the next time you come across a 1967 Washington quarter, don't just think of it as a regular coin. Look at it more closely, because it carries history. It tells a story about an unusual time in American coinage, and it can be valuable. The 1967 Washington quarter dollar with no mint mark is a coin that continues to attract collectors, and its importance makes it stand out as one of the key issues from the 1960s. Next up, the 1972 Washington quarter dollar coin with no mint mark is one of those coins that many people overlook, but collectors know it has value, importance, and a story worth telling. When most people see a quarter from 1972, they think of it as just another piece of pocket change. But in reality, the 1972 Washington quarter carries significance in American coinage history, and under the right circumstances, it can be valuable. That is why in this video we're going to explore everything you need to know about the 1972 Washington quarter with no mint mark, from its background and design to its errors, condition, and why it remains a collectible coin. Stay with me until the end, because the more you learn about this coin, the more you will understand why the 1972 Washington quarter dollar with no mint mark is considered valuable. The first thing to understand is the mint mark itself, or, in this case, the absence of one. When you see a Washington quarter from 1972 with no mint mark, it means the coin was struck at the Philadelphia Mint. At that time, the Philadelphia Mint did not place a mint mark on coins, so the lack of a letter under the date identifies its origin. Collectors recognize this immediately. The D mint mark stood for Denver, the S stood for San Francisco, but a blank spot meant Philadelphia. And this simple detail, the absence of a mint mark, is an identifying characteristic that makes the 1972 Washington quarter dollar coin with no mint mark a key issue for collectors. Now let's go back to the bigger picture. The Washington quarter series had been around since 1932. Originally designed by John Flanagan to honor the 200th anniversary of George Washington's birth. By 1972, the design had been in use for 4 decades. On the obverse, Washington's portrait faces left. The word liberty is inscribed above. In God We Trust appears to the side, and the date 1972 is at the bottom. On the reverse, the bold eagle with outstretched wings remains a strong symbol of the nation. While the design stayed the same, the composition had changed. Since 1965, quarters were no longer made of 90% silver. Instead, the 1972 Washington quarter, with no mint mark, was struck in copper-nickel clad, a copper core sandwiched between layers of nickel. This change in composition marked a new era in American coinage, and the 1972 issue is part of that era. Collectors know that this history gives the coin importance, and importance leads to value. But why is the 1972 Washington quarter dollar coin with no mint mark valuable? There are several reasons. First, condition plays a big role. While millions of these coins were produced for circulation, very few have survived in pristine condition. Most 1972 quarters were used heavily in everyday transactions, wearing down the details and luster. Finding a 1972 quarter in mint state or uncirculated condition is much harder today. Those coins with sharp strikes, clean surfaces, and full luster are much more valuable. Collectors are always willing to pay a premium for high-quality examples of the 1972 Washington quarter with no mint mark. Another reason for the coin's value is errors and varieties. During minting, mistakes can happen, and in 1972 several types of errors are known on quarters. These include double die errors, off-center strikes, clip planchets, and coins struck on wrong planchets. Each of these errors turns a regular coin into a rare collectible. For example, a 1972 Washington quarter with no mint mark that shows doubling in the lettering or in George Washington's portrait can be worth far more than face value. An off-center strike, where part of the design is missing, also adds value. Even clip planchets, where a small piece of the coin's edge is missing, are collectible. These errors remind us that even coins produced in large numbers can yield valuable treasures, and the 1972 quarter is no exception. Let's also consider the role of the 1972 Washington quarter in collections. Many collectors build complete date and mint-mark sets of Washington quarters. This means they need the 1972 Philadelphia issue, which is the no mint-mark version, to complete their sets. This constant demand from collectors ensures that the 1972 Washington quarter-dollar coin with no mint mark will always have a place in the market and always carry value. Without it, a collection is incomplete, so demand continues year after year. Another interesting point is that the early 1970s were a time when coin collecting was becoming more popular in the United States. People were checking their pocket change, looking for rare dates and varieties. The 1972 Washington quarter is part of this era. While it may not contain silver, its connection to everyday life in the early 1970s makes it meaningful. For many collectors, owning a coin from this time is like holding a piece of history. The connection to the past, combined with the possibility of errors and the importance of condition, makes the 1972 Washington quarter-dollar coin with no mint mark a valuable collectible. Collectors also understand that age increases scarcity. The 1972 quarter is now more than 50 years old. Over decades, many coins have been lost, damaged, or worn beyond recognition. Every year that passes, it becomes harder to find well-preserved examples. That scarcity creates value. When you come across a sharp, well-struck 1972 Washington quarter with no mint mark, you are looking at a survivor, and collectors appreciate that rarity. This appreciation translates into value in the numismatic world. The design of the coin also adds to its collectible appeal. Washington's portrait has become iconic, and collectors admire the way Flanagan's design captures dignity and strength. The eagle on the reverse has also become a classic symbol. Together, these designs make the 1972 Washington quarter-dollar coin a beautiful piece of history, as well as a practical coin. The connection between design and era makes it valuable beyond its face value. We should also discuss the role of grading in determining value. Coins are graded based on their condition, from well-worn circulated examples to pristine mint-state coins. A 1972 Washington quarter with no mint mark that is heavily worn may only be worth face value, but one that is in mint-state condition, with full luster and no wear, can be worth much more. High grades mean higher value, and that is why collectors look closely at every detail when evaluating the 1972 Washington quarter-dollar coin. The possibility of finding hidden gems also makes this coin exciting. Imagine searching through a roll of quarters and finding a 1972 no mint mark coin that shows an error or remains in pristine condition. That discovery could turn a simple quarter into something worth several times its face value. This potential keeps collectors interested and ensures that the 1972 Washington quarter-dollar coin with no mint mark remains valuable and desirable. When we put all of these points together, the history, the design, the absence of a mint mark, the condition, the errors, the collector demand, and the passage of time, it is easy to see why this coin is valuable. The 1972 Washington quarter with no mint mark is not just a coin for spending. It is a coin that represents an era, carries stories, and holds potential value for those who take the time to appreciate it. So whenever you come across a 1972 Washington quarter, don't dismiss it as just spare change. Take a closer look, because if it has no mint mark, it means it came from Philadelphia. If it is in high condition, or if it carries an error, it could be worth much more than its face value. The 1972 Washington quarter-dollar coin with no mint mark is valuable, and it deserves attention from every collector and coin enthusiast. Next up, the 1998 Washington quarter-dollar coin with D mint mark is one of those modern coins that looks ordinary at first glance, but has a story, a history, and a value that makes it special to coin collectors. While many people think that quarters from the 1990s are just common pocket change, the truth is that certain dates and mint marks stand out, and the 1998 Washington quarter struck at the Denver Mint is one of them. Throughout this video, we're going to take a close look at the 1998 Washington quarter with D mint mark, and I want you to stay with me all the way, because you will discover why this coin is valuable, why collectors seek it, and why you should never overlook a 1998 Washington quarter dollar coin with the D mint mark. First, let's talk about the mint mark itself. The D mint mark on the 1998 Washington quarter dollar coin stands for the Denver Mint. Located in Colorado, the Denver Mint has been producing coins for circulation for over a century, and in 1998, millions of Washington quarters came out of this facility. When you look under the date on the obverse side of the coin, you will see a small letter D. That tiny letter is important because it tells us the origin of the coin. Collectors pay close attention to mint marks, because mint mark varieties can separate a common coin from a more desirable one. And in the case of the 1998 Washington quarter with D mint mark, this detail is what makes the coin a distinct and valuable part of the Washington quarter series. The design of the 1998 Washington quarter dollar coin is the familiar one by John Flanagan that had been used since 1932. On the obverse, George Washington faces left. The word liberty appears above his head. The motto, "In God We Trust," is inscribed to the left, and the date 1998 rests below his bust. The reverse shows the American eagle with outstretched wings, perched on a bundle of arrows, with olive branches below. This reverse design had been used on Washington quarters for decades, and by 1998 it was in its final years. Just 1 year later, in 1999, the United States Mint would launch the State Quarters program, replacing the classic eagle reverse with state-specific designs. That makes the 1998 Washington quarter dollar with D mint mark one of the last coins to feature the traditional eagle reverse, and that fact alone gives it historical importance and collectible value. Now let's consider the composition. The 1998 Washington quarter was struck in a copper-nickel-clad alloy, with a pure copper core sandwiched between layers of nickel. This composition had been standard since 1965, when silver was removed from circulating quarters. Even though the 1998 quarter does not contain silver, its value lies in its collectible status, not just its metal content. Collectors prized the 1998 Washington quarter with D mint mark for its place in the timeline of American coinage, for its design, and for its potential condition and era varieties. Condition plays a very big role in the value of this coin. The majority of 1998 quarters were circulated, used in everyday transactions, and suffered wear and tear. These circulated examples are still worth face value, but uncirculated coins, coins with sharp strikes, and coins with full mint luster can be worth much more to collectors. A 1998 Washington quarter with D mint mark in mint state condition stands out because it shows the coin as it looked the moment it left the Denver Mint. Collectors know how difficult it is to find pristine coins that survived more than 2 decades without scratches or wear, and that difficulty creates value. The higher the grade, the higher the value of the 1998 Washington quarter dollar coin with D mint mark. Another factor that adds value is era coins. In 1998, just like in other years, the minting process sometimes produced mistakes. Double dies, off-center strikes, clip planchets, and other errors are known to exist, and each of these errors can make a 1998 Washington quarter with D mint mark worth far more than face value. Imagine finding a quarter that shows doubling in the inscriptions or in Washington's portrait, or a quarter struck off-center, so that part of the design is missing. These mint errors are highly collectible and add rarity, and rarity always translates to value. That's why coin enthusiasts carefully examine their 1998 Washington quarter dollar coins with D mint mark to look for unusual characteristics that might reveal an era variety. Collectors also prize the 1998 Washington quarter because it fits into complete date and mint mark sets. Many numismatists build Washington quarter collections year by year, separating coins by Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco issues. To complete the 1998 section of the set, they must have the 1998 Denver Mint coin. This constant demand keeps the coin relevant, desirable, and valuable. Without the 1998 Washington quarter dollar coin with D mint mark, a Washington quarter collection would be incomplete. It is also important to think about timing. The 1998 Washington quarter was issued at the very end of the era, before the state quarters began. That means it has the distinction of being part of the last group of Eagle reverse coins. Collectors often look back on the final years of a design series with special interest because once the design changes, the older coins take on a nostalgic and historical value. That is the case with the 1998 Washington Quarter with D mint mark. It serves as both an ending and a transition in the long Washington Quarter series. As we look deeper, the age of the coin also plays a role. While 1998 may not sound old compared to coins from the early 20th century, the 1998 Washington Quarter is now more than 25 years old. Over time, many of these coins have been lost, heavily worn, or damaged. The surviving high-quality coins are fewer in number, and scarcity increases value. This is why uncirculated rolls of 1998 Washington Quarters are in demand, and why collectors continue to search for mint-state examples of the 1998 Washington Quarter dollar with D mint mark. Collectors also know that coins are more than just metal discs. They are pieces of history. The 1998 Washington Quarter connects us to a specific moment, the late 1990s, when the classic Eagle reverse design was about to be retired. Holding one of these coins reminds us of the tradition of the Washington Quarter design and the transition to a new era in American coinage. That historical connection makes the 1998 Washington Quarter dollar with D mint mark valuable beyond its face value. To sum up all of these points, the 1998 Washington Quarter with D mint mark is valuable because of its mint origin at Denver, its design as one of the last Eagle reverse quarters, its potential for high-grade mint state examples, its possible era varieties, its role in complete collections, and its place in American coinage history. Collectors recognize all of these factors, and that recognition ensures the 1998 Washington Quarter dollar coin with D mint mark will continue to be valued and appreciated. So whenever you come across a 1998 Washington Quarter, don't dismiss it as just another coin for spending. Look for the D mint mark, check its condition, and see if it might have an error. You could be holding something much more valuable than you realize. The 1998 Washington Quarter dollar coin with D mint mark is valuable, and it deserves your attention. Thank you for watching this video all the way through. As you've seen, coins like the 1965 Washington Quarter dollar with no mint mark, the 1967 Washington Quarter with no mint mark, the 1972 Washington Quarter with no mint mark, the 1980 Washington Quarter with D mint mark, and even the 1998 Washington Quarter dollar coin with D mint mark can all be surprisingly valuable and highly collectible. These quarters may look like ordinary change, but collectors know their history, errors, and mint marks make them worth much more than just 25 cents. If you enjoy learning about rare and valuable Washington Quarter coins and other collectible coins, make sure you hit that subscribe button right now, because I'll be bringing you even more videos about coins that could be hiding in your pocket and are worth far more than face value.